Sheesh, look how cluttery my floor is, guys. But anyway, we have the brand new Tantan X68 in a size 56 coming in at 7.1 kilograms, and that is all in ready to ride. So that means we have a bottle cage, we have an out front computer mount, we have pedals, we have the spider-based power meter courtesy of the latest Sram Red E1. We even have the brand new Sram Force E1 group set as well. And then we have these lovely limited edition number 6 50/58 wheels, the first year anniversary edition, 7.1 kilograms. Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, we are taking a look at my brand new fall winter jersey courtesy of the Nero Show. Man, if I'm not glazing Tantan, then I'm definitely glazing my buddies out in Australia. No, I'm just kidding. But in today's video, we are definitely taking a look at my brand new, finally built up Tantan X68. Obviously, we can tell what this bike looks like because it's basically a bootleg Tarmac SL8. So we're going to be going over some of the specs, the details on this bike. I should have a full weight for you guys somewhere in this video, and then I'm going to give you my first initial thoughts on this build now that I have it fully built up. Huge shout out to Tantan for sending me out the frame set. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, the main objective with this Tantan X68 frame set is to answer the question that we all been dying to know. Can this $600, $700 frame set come pretty close to the genuine Tarmac SL8? And so in order for us to do that, I have spec'd out this bike exactly as I would if I was building it up with a premium Western brand. So let's talk about some of the specs that we have on this complete bike. So the first and foremost, let's talk about the cockpit. So this is courtesy of EXS. This is their flagship air over cockpit. We have 38 centimeters on the tops, and then in the hoods we have 40 centimeters. Now, if you've been noticing lately on my channel, you've been noticing there's been a trend of the choice of cockpit I've been using. I've actually been going back to the more standard sort of wider widths on my handlebars. Don't get me wrong, I do like my super narrow cockpits, but just for a general all-purpose sort of a forever bike, I think 38 in the tops and then 40 in the hoods, or excuse me, in the drops is the way to go, just to give me a little bit more control, a little bit of modulation with the steering, and especially when I am out of the saddle sprinting. And then the length on the stem is 140 millimeters in length, but even though that does sound a little bit long, the actual reach on here is only 70 millimeters versus the traditional 75 or 77. So really effectively, this is more like a 130 stem with like a 77 millimeters in the reach. Next up, let's talk about my saddle really quickly, guys. Sella Italia SLR Boost, and this is just the standard $150 version, so no big differences there. Next up, let's talk about these wheels. So these are from number 6. These are their 50/58 wheels, the anniversary edition. I believe I have 21 out of 66 special wheel sets made because of course they are limited edition, giving the numbering system on these. We have 58 millimeters in the rear, we have 50 in the front. The internal width is around 24 millimeters. The external width is around 31 or 32, which stretches out these GP 5028 to around 30 and a half at the rim. We have carbon aero bladed spokes, ceramic speed bearings. We have the 54 tooth star ratchet hub engagement, and I will make a separate video on these wheels, but these wheel set come in under 1,300 grams. Super light, very stiff. I have the standard version of the same wheels on my Tavello Aero as well as on my Polygon Helios A7. Those have been my dedicated race wheels for the summer of 2025. I like them a lot, highly recommend it, and I do have a code for you guys for number 6 wheels. And then next up, let's talk about the group set. So the group set is a bit of a hodgepodge of various Sram Force components. So starting with the cassette out back, this is the latest Sram Force E1 cassette. We have a 10 to 30 range on there. Then the rear derailleur is basically a standard D2 Sram Force derailleur. Same thing with the front derailleur. This is just a standard D2 Force derailleur. Then the crankset, this is the current SRAM Red E1 integrated crankset slash power meter. We have a 50/37 crank. I like it a lot. And then the crank arms, the carbon crank arms, these are the previous Sram Force 170 millimeters in length. And then next up, these are the main event for this group set, guys. So these are the latest generation of the Sram Force E1 levers. The ergonomics on here are fantastic. And then even the braking force or the ease of braking, it really is one finger braking. It's fantastic. I'll do a separate video comparing these levers to that of the current Shimano Ultegra, just sort of a head-to-head battle, because the Ultegra levers, I really love the braking modularity. I love the feel. I love the ergonomics on those, but these will definitely give that Ultegra Shimano a run for its money. And it is definitely worthy to note that there is a little bit of extra reach on these levers, so it does make it very comfortable for myself who has average size hands. But if you do have smaller hands, then you may need to account for that with your cockpit, particularly in either the length of the stem or the reach on the handlebars, because it probably does add at least a couple of millimeters in the overall effective length to the cockpit. Overall, I'm really satisfied with how this bike and frame set as a whole turned out as far as the build goes. I have everything really spec'd out, essentially one-to-one to how I would with one of the premium Western brand. The paint job on here looks fantastic in the sunlight, and I think just overall the proportions look really good. So it's no secret and it's no surprise why the Tarmac SL8 is such a popular frame set and why so many people love speccing out and customizing that particular frame set. Sorry guys, we are back inside. The reason being is because when I was filming the outdoor portion of this video, several YNs came walking around me smoking weed. School must have just got out on the south side, and your boy Patty was super nervous that they were going to try to come and jack me and steal my bike. So nonetheless, we are back inside. But the next thing I want to talk about has to just do with the overall components and budget for this build. Looking at the group set, the wheels, the integrated cockpit, this is not an inexpensive build by any stretch of the imagination. You're basically looking at about $5,000 in all of these components, not including the frame set itself. You got about $2,000 for the wheels. You have about another $2,000 for the Sram E1 group set. You have $450 for the EXS Aero cockpit. You have another $150 for the saddle, the pedals. All this stuff adds up to about $5,000. So you're probably wondering, why am I using an inexpensive frame to be paired with this very expensive set of components? And there's actually two reasons why I'm doing this. So the first reason why I'm doing this is because in order to give you guys a very fair review on this bike as a whole, I wanted to spec it out similarly in a way that I would with all of my other bikes. Something like my Tavello Aero, my Tarmac SL8, my Giant Propel. I wanted to make sure that the components are basically comparable so that when we take it out on the road, the experience will basically be able to remove any sort of variables when it comes to the components. The second reason why I went with such expensive components is because I wanted to investigate just how much of the frame set is part of the equation. Is having a really nice frame, is that 70% of the equation? Maybe it's only 20. Can you really get by with just using a $600 frame set but still using expensive higher end components? Maybe you can get a very close similar ride to that of the Western brands if you just focus your money on the components. I have said to you guys here for the last 5 years that at the very least, spend a good portion of your budget on very good wheels, something like these number 650/58 wheels. And so if you chimp out on other things, maybe like the cockpit or the saddle, definitely spend money on the wheels. Next up, let's talk about the fit and finish on this Tantan X68, or should I say the lack thereof of fit and finish. So in my previous video on the unboxing of this frame, I had mentioned that the BSA bottom bracket area was pretty good. I was able to thread in the ceramic BSA bottom bracket from SRAM. Basically, I was able to hand tighten it all the way to the end inside of the frame set. So that was a-okay. However, when it came to the facing or the caliper mount areas, this frame by far is the worst out of any frame set I have ever featured on this channel. And that includes other frames from Tantan that have cost around the same amount of money, $600 to $700 USD. So for some reason on here, they're just terrible. And so what that meant was it's basically impossible to get the calipers to align with the rotors without doing some sort of sanding. I tried everything. I spent hours and hours trying to prevent the rotors from rubbing on the calipers. And so unfortunately, especially for the rear caliper mount, I had to do a little bit of sanding, but you want to be very careful when you start to sand this, because if you start to sand down these caliper mounts and things are not square and straight or even, you could mess them up beyond repair. So I just did a little bit at a time. I almost have it to where it's not rubbing, but unfortunately there is still disc rub, especially on the rear wheel. And this is some of the things that you should expect at this price point. You think about it, it's kind of just like sweat equity. Think about it maybe if you were buying up a fixer-upper home or a property that needs to be rehabbed. You're getting it at a good price because the understanding is you probably have to put in some of your own effort to get it up to snuff to where it needs to be. So just keep in mind, guys, that particularly with this X68, especially from what I heard from other customers online on the forums, that the facing and the mounts on this Tantan X68 is horrible. It's the worst out of any frame that I have featured so far on this channel in the last 5 years. So what is it like to ride this bike out now that I've been riding it for the last week or so? So I don't have any particular notes on here, so I'm just going to basically freestyle this segment of the video. The first thing I noticed right away is just how comfortable this bike is. It is very, very comfortable. And I'm using 28C tires with TPU inner tubes. I'm not even running these wheels tubeless. And I find this ride to be very comfortable. It's very agreeable. In fact, I would give the slight edge and comfort to this over the actual or genuine Tarmac SL8. Another thing I've noticed about this bike is just how this bike basically responds to its environment. So it doesn't necessarily ride like a real Tarmac SL8, but I will say it's just as fast and it's just as stable in the crosswinds. And that does make sense given that the design is essentially one-to-one to a genuine Tarmac SL8. So it's just as fast. It does well in the crosswinds. Now, when it comes to stiffness, now I noticed this is where this bike lacks. And I suppose that would make sense considering that this bike is very comfortable. It definitely is not a noodle and it definitely is not sloppy. So kudos to Tantan on that front because they obviously made a little bit of considerations to the carbon layup. Because while it's comfortable and even though it's not super duper stiff, it's still stiff enough, I would say, for most recreational riders on the market. Cornering is probably just what I expect with that. A lot of the cornering and handling is going to really come down to the length of your cockpit. It's going to come down to your wheels, your overall bike position. But there isn't anything bad that I have to say about this bike or frame set in terms of cornering ability. Now, when it comes to like acceleration and out of the saddle, again, I think that this is where this bike lacks. Again, it's not a noodle by any stretch of the imagination. It's actually pretty refined. I just noticed that it just does not have that oomph compared to something like my recent Scott 4 RC Pro, the real SL8, a Giant Propel, or like my Canyon Aero that I featured on this channel last year. I would say this is where this bike lacks the most. It's sort of that perceived stiffness. When you really mash on the pedals, it doesn't feel like it wants to go right away compared to some of those other bikes. But I would say that's probably okay given the price point of this frame set at $600. And like I said, if you pair this frame set with premium components, something like these number 6 wheels that use carbon spokes, I think you can make up some of that stiffness that is lost with the frame set itself. So I've only been riding this bike for a week. So the question becomes, how close can we get to a real Tarmac SL8 when using similar components that I had on that genuine Tarmac? On this first glance, or I should say this first week, I would say we are about 75% there. So basically you're getting 75% of a genuine Tarmac SL8 for a price point for just the frame, not including the components, for basically a fifth or a sixth of the price. So that's pretty good if I'm being honest. I will say that obviously there comes with the whole implications and maybe moral of rocking a clone or a bootleg Tarmac frame, but that's not what this channel is all about. You, of course, should make your own decisions. But I would say so far in this first week, we will continue to test and review this frame as the months go by. But I would say for this first week, we are about 70 to 75% of the way of a real Tarmac SL8 for only a fifth of the price for just the frame set. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with how this bike came together. Besides the caliper mounts, the whole entire bike build was super easy to do. I didn't have any stripped bolts. I did have to tighten down the seat post to around 10 Newton meters versus the 6.2 that is displayed on the seat post clamp. But I think that's just a default carryover from the actual genuine Tarmac SL8. But so far, it looks really good. The paint job is good. I think the way this overall build turned out really, really well. And I think that just over time, I would probably feel like this bike is more like closer to maybe 80 to 85% of a genuine Tarmac SL8 versus the 70 to 75% that I feel about it as of today. So that is going to wrap up today's video, guys, on this video. very, very windy day. As always, questions, comments, and concerns, please feel free to leave them down below, and I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.